Anybody?
As long as people identify themselves when they talk so that I can see and to take notes, I'm fine with sharing the screen.
That wasn't an answer. All right. I'll just sit here for now.
Okay.
We'll if you want to see it, let me know and I'll try to put it back up, but I hope it doesn't mess up the audio.
So I'm just gonna,
Everything's work, so-
Marcus, I'll just repeat myself for them real quickly.
Yep.
My name is Troy Smith. I'm the Recreation Chair here for the town of Waldoboro. I'll kind of go through real quick. This is the first time that we've met since the pandemic started in March. And we're excited to have this many visitors. We haven't had this many visitors since we started, so it's good that there's people that want to be involved. So with that, I'll call to order the Wednesday, January 27th, 2021 meeting of the Recreation Committee. I'll ask again if there's any citizens that would like to comment before we have our presentation. And there should be an opportunity for conversation later on. And then we'll get started with Saran Pine, who's going to give the presentation on the 80 Gray Park. And I'll turn it over to you. Can everybody see from home? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
I don't have the video up.
Marcus, I sent an email with the link to Ms. Wittenbach, and you should be getting a request from her to sign her in.
Yep, it hasn't come through. I will let her know as soon as it comes through.
All right.
But can she hear us?
She can hear.
She can hear us, so at this point, we'll just let
Okay.
Saran
Okay.
have the floor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, my name is Saran Pine. Good evening, and thank you for having me. As you may know, I came before the Select Board on December 8th and proposed an in-town park for A.D. Gray, for the A.D. Gray property and the adjacent parcels. And the Select Board referred that proposal to this committee for review and recommendation. So because I've never been before this committee, some of what I say may be a review of my earlier presentations, but I just want to be sure that you all know me. And I also want to be sure that we focus on these 8 acres, approximately 8 acres, and what we can do for the town with that property. So by way of background, part of my past work, a great part of my past work really, for over 30 years, was providing legal representation for the state of Maine's Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry, and especially the Bureau of Parks and Recreation. And also I represented the Land for Maine's Future Board. So my work involved me very much in the creation of parks, and parks of different and varying uses, and parks located in towns, and parks in rural areas too. So that experience led me to look into whether the A.D. Gray grounds and adjacent parcels would be suitable. And also because after the November 3rd vote, people who know me approached me and said, why isn't this property going to be a park? You already have a baseball diamond. You've got a couple of tennis courts. Why aren't we doing this? So, after doing some research and questioning, I believe there are compelling reasons to remove that building, the vacant building, and relocate the tennis courts and restore the wetland area, which is there's a designated wetland area where the tennis courts are. It's part of one is actually in the state and town designated wetland area, and both of them are mostly also in the wetland buffer area. So besides a recreational issue, there's a water quality issue for people to look at. So I'm here today to talk with the committee about this proposal and to talk about recommendations that you can make. So concerning a park, I would imagine that the committee already knows that what parks do for people in general. They really boost well-being for an entire neighborhood and a community, and they foster community, where a place where everyone would be welcome. And it's a fact that parks improve community health. This park also could reduce stormwater runoff and attract visitors and enhance property values. And it's a fact that during the COVID-19 epidemic, all across our country, people have been flocking to their parks. They needed a place to turn to for fresh air, for exercise, for meditation, and a much needed break. So I know that the plans that I provided, there were 4 pages. And the first page is really just orients people to know where this property is in relationship to the Madomic River. Not just the fact that it's on School Street, but you have the river nearby, you have Mill Street, Jefferson Street, just in case you weren't totally familiar with the location. Then I had a plan of the existing conditions, and that shows the tennis courts, the current building. I didn't go all the way to include all of the ball field, but it is there. And then the 3rd and 4th pages are the site concept plan. And the last page, which is, I believe, Marcus, the one that you have available for people to look at who are on Zoom, that really has an overlay of an aerial of the property. This property is actually 4 separate parcels. But my proposal would be to combine all 4, since you already have an area for youth sports, which are so important in our communities. And I think we should talk a little bit about the tennis courts. People will probably have comments about them, but my suggestion is that the tennis courts be removed from their current location, from the wetland area, which, by the way, the tennis courts, I believe, were built in the 1970s, and it was probably perfectly fine to build them at that time in that location. But they're not in good repair. The funds that were used were land and water conservation funds, which is a program that is, it's actually a National Park Service program, but it's the state administers it. The state of Maine does, through the Bureau of Parks and Lands. And it would be a good thing on a number of levels to remove these tennis courts from their current location. One would be that if you build them elsewhere, you will, I mean the town really, the town will get credits for the land and water conservation funds that they're not getting now. The town will not. If you might already know this, and I don't mean to say things that you don't already know.
No, it's fine.
But if you wanted to do another park someplace else and use those funds, you would get negative points for those current tennis courts, the tennis courts in their current configuration, I believe, because they haven't been maintained. So rather than bring them up to speed where they are, I think they should be moved. You can restore the wetlands. You've got a water quality issue that you can resolve, and at the same time you can get your points back for future projects. So the layout itself with the ice hockey, skating rink, the tennis courts, those are things that I just put in there as suggestions. And really, it's this committee, I think, that should decide what, you know, really in consultation with other members of the town, what you would like there. I understand that there's already been some activity in creating a skating rink behind the town hall, but that it's not completed. I think, am I right on that,
The
Mark?
land is completed, but we don't have a liner for the ice rink.
Uh-huh,
It was gonna be about $2,000 to get a new liner, and
Jeez.
with budget cuts this year, there was no room for it, so we're hoping in the future, but.
Seems like that'd be tricky with the parking, and then like if there's a fire or something, you know, people are parked. Seems like it'd be kind of a chaos.
Yeah, I mean, in a previous conversation, we had discussed some of the pitfalls or their differences, and obviously there's pluses and minuses for both of them. So
Right.
one of the pluses for the ice rink here, when we had talked about, and I'm not saying that is the ideal location, was
right,
that you have volunteers that, or even EMS staff, police, like, people are always here, it's always,
available.
and it would help for trying to maintain the ice. I mean, because right now it's, the recreation department is a department of one. And right now, that's not even a full-time person with the adjustments to the COVID budget. So to expect to maintain an ice rink is still a stretch.
Yeah.
It was more visible, this location's on Route 1, where the other one was up, when I had it up behind 80 Gray before, it almost never got used, people didn't know it was up there.
Uh-huh,
And having it here, it's within 400 feet of a fire
Extinguisher, I mean, yeah, water supply, there you go. Thanks,
Within
Melvin.
400 feet of a water supply, so they can just run a hose. When we had it up at 80 Gray, that ice rink holds 16,000 gallons of water, so it took 16 fire truck loads.
So
on 4 different nights.
So your plan calls for, I've seen it in the plan, that
Right.
you would, obviously doing a construction project, you would try to make the proper water connections and, or whatever those
Exactly.
amenities would call for,
so there is water.
So that's really kind of a moot point as far as the
Exactly.
water goes.
That's right, because there is water there anyway,
Correct.
and water and electricity and sewer. So, but really, this was, as I'm trying to stress, this
Yeah,
is
sure.
just a draft.
Sure.
And it's just my impressions or things that popped into my head.
Right.
Whereas you all are much more knowledgeable about what's going on in town and where the other parks are located in town. If there are really any. But there aren't
yeah,
any of
there's not-
this- Is there any of this size in town? And there certainly is not in the center of town. And-
No, I mean, the parks obviously are over by the Hannaford, you know,
Right.
Park?
it's
Yeah,
considered.
that's just where people make out.
I don't think it's that. I don't think that's a park at all.
Well, actually, people.
I mean,
really
I'd just
do-
like to say, like, if you're
People
gonna
use
ask a
that.
question, well, answer what is listed as a park. Your
Yeah.
definition and your belief of it could be different.
Something
There's
different.
obviously 2 ball fields that are located, that they use. But there's, you know, obviously, a park obviously has value, and there's locations here possibly, and other locations in the future as well, so.
Well, the one from across from Hannaford's, I mean, is actually used. There are a lot of people who stop there for lunch.
A lot.
I mean,
I mowed it all summer when I was working with Public Works, and if I didn't get there before 9 AM, I could only do parts of it because vehicles were in the way all the time.
Right.
Or the people who park across, the house across the street park there.
so for this, I mean, aside from a skating rink, because you already have plans for it, I mean, I don't have anything in, I didn't put anything in here for basketball, for example. So, I mean, there could be areas for, I mean, youth sports are just so important for any community. And so, you know, there probably are other things that you would want to put here that, that could be important. But, so, on to costs and funding, just so you know, I've been working on estimates for contractors, but because I don't know exactly what this committee would decide, I don't have those numbers. But the numbers the rough numbers that I have, I still have made inquiries about private donors that would help towards funding the match that you would need if you were to apply for land and water conservation funds for the balance of whatever construction costs there are. And I'm fairly confident that those funds would be received and the match requirement could be met. So I'm asking you, really, what I'm asking this committee to do is to make a recommendation to the select board to really table their discussions with Volunteers of America and give your committee time to flush things out. I'm happy to work with you on funding and then see what the town wants to do.
Melvin, did you have something you wanted to,
Well, it's
as long as it's on topic?
it's on topic, it's that piece of land there, that old building that you went to school at probably at some point in time in your life.
Yes,
And
that's
there
correct.
are people that, went to school there, graduated from high school, that think, well, this is historic. Well, if we're gonna keep everything that's historic, I think my farm's historic, but it isn't. When I'm gone, somebody else will do what they wanna do with it. So we gotta get that idea out of our heads. And do we wanna build more Section 8 housing in Waldeboro? Or do we want a park that everybody can use? Whether an old crippled old man like me, or you and your daughters, or the 30-year-old down the road that has no place to go.
Future value is huge.
Them values are huge in my mind.
So I would just say this to that comment or to any comments. This is obviously the Recreation Commission. Our job isn't gonna be,
Okay.
I also am the Deputy Recreation Director in Brunswick, and we have a Recreation Commission.
Commission.
So
Got it.
oftentimes I will
Sorry.
missay it, but Recreation Committee.
Okay.
And we're here tonight to really discuss this park, not necessarily what the town deems most valuable for that acreage as far as the other projects that's proposed. We're all privy to that knowledge. We all understand that there's two different projects.
Oh, sure.
If you're gonna ask us if
But
we,
they've kind of put this on you guys.
I,
Just saying.
yeah,
They kinda
just,
put it on you.
just so you know, like,
Robert, can I interrupt for one quick second? I'm
Yep.
sorry. This is Kelly Burton. I'm the secretary and I'm trying to take notes. I just wanted to ask if anyone, any of the citizens present are speaking, if you don't mind identifying yourself first for me, please. Thank you.
sure, if you wanna start. Yeah, so in the future, let's go there. So Melvin, I'm sorry I forget your last name, but
Williams.
Melvin Williams was the previous comment, so if you can recognize his voice, then you should be good.
I'll be fine. I know that, but thank you.
And your name again in the back, I'm sorry?
Jeff, or
Jeff Hart?
Jeff Hurd.
Heard, sorry, Jeff. So again,
But you're right. Yeah.
we are aware of it. The decision for us to what happens to the end line of this project is not gonna fall on this committee. Our committee is to determine the value of this property as far as how it lines up with our plans as a rec department, because we're also trying to propose, with a very valuable project to our original task was the recreation community center. So that was kind of the biggest priority for our department, is trying to develop that project. This project has then since come up in the last 6 months, and here we are debating or looking at this to see the merits of it, the uses of it, and the value of it. If you're gonna ask any of us on the committee, or any recreation director, or anybody that's involved with it, could you always use more parks? Could you always use more courts? Could you use more gyms? The answer is always gonna be yes. So, looking at this and saying, yeah, could we update a tennis court? Could we have some multi-use? Yeah, there's merit to it. But are we gonna ultimately decide if this is the greatest use for that property? It's not necessarily gonna come from this committee, besides saying, let's look at this plan You know, ideally, we've been a committee for 2 years. Nobody's ever come to us that I know of with a formal plan or desire for a park. This has come forth with whatever intentions, and I'm not disagreeing, it has merit, right? To build a park. So tonight, I mean, I just wanted to kind of open it up to some questions. I mean, the odds of us making a recommendation to the selectmen for action tonight are probably fairly low.
Right.
It'll probably take us to a chance to digest all this information. And then again, we meet again next month. You know, with that, I don't know the timeline, but I would expect that the selectmen wouldn't act on that until we've had a recommendation or a chance to meet to see how it fits the rec committee's proposal. With that, I guess I would open up to questions or thoughts from any of the committee.
Saran, Karen Rowan here. I'd like to know about the funding. How would you go about, and what kind of funding could you amass to do a project like this?
Well, first of all, as I think Marcus knows, the Land and Water, and maybe
Yep, I do,
you
yes,
do
well.
too. Last summer, Congress put through, and it was signed into law, I think it's called the Great America.
Great outdoor, yeah, something like that.
Great Outdoors Act. And that has brought forth really vast amounts of money that are available. And this particular project, I'm told by my conversations that I've had with the person who directs that money out of Augusta, that this project would come under those funds. So, but it's a 50-50 match. So whatever the costs would be, the rest would be raised by private donors, through private donors. I haven't anticipated asking the town for any money. Oftentimes, you do see some projects where people come forward and they get to a point and they say, we do need money from the town. If you look at this map, there are things on here which are to be installed only if the funds exceed demolition and landscape. So really, what I'm proposing is demolition, landscape, and moving the tennis courts.
Okay. And do you want to explain how the land conservation funds work as far as
Well, if there's-
what the contractor, what you're kind of really
There's an
making the
application,
agreement?
there's an application process. I don't know if Marcus has been involved in any of them. I think you have.
I've been involved in the maintenance of the tennis courts and in contact with them about the upkeep there, but I haven't applied for any grants myself. Or-
But didn't you meet with Doug Beck? Oh,
I
I'm
met with
sorry.
Doug Beck, but always about the tennis courts and getting them back up to
Right.
good graces with the LWCF.
Right, yeah.
So basically, I guess the point I was trying to get to, and I'm not saying those are obviously a great option,
Yeah.
but they do come with a cost of you basically would determine what your parcel was. In this case, it would be the whole lot.
All
or
8 acres.
All 8 acres.
You've already got the baseball field, although I understand there's some things in the ball field that need to happen too.
Yeah, I mean, the ball field's in need of some upkeep, but as of right now, the only full parcel of those 3 properties that is under LWCF
Right.
control, so to speak, is the tennis court.
Right, I understand that.
Tennis court.
I totally understand that. But it would be good to work with you to figure out what those costs would be to get the baseball field up to grade. I think, am I right? It needs, the scoreboard doesn't work, am I correct?
There is no scoreboard.
There is no scoreboard. Well, then it certainly doesn't work, does it?
It's- Yeah.
The teams aren't very good, we don't score a lot of runs.
It depends how that field could go, it depends how much you want to put into it.
Yeah, sure.
I'd say the minimum would be, if you were really gonna designate funds to fix it. A new backstop and a fence, the outside fence are in need of repair or
Yep.
rebuilding.
Yeah,
If you wanna get crazy, my idea was, turn the field so we can get a little more use out of it, but that involves blasting and a lot more money that way, but those are just my dreams I've had since
Think big.
I've been working here, so.
I like stuff like that, though.
So basically, it would require to get those funds would be to use the whole 8 parcel that would stay and have to be used in recreation for perpetuity. So in reality is, what may seem like 150,000, let's just say, for that matching grant for that property. Seems like, that's a fair deal for right now. But in 30 or 50 years, when we're long gone or whatnot, and somebody else wants to use that, they're gonna be like, geez, you sold that whole property, or you tied up that whole property for $145,000, $150,000. And I know we can't control all the future, but
Right.
that's one thing that, we can't move the tennis, or that tennis court has to stay a recreational use pretty much forever unless we have matching land.
To move
To go
it
somewhere
someplace
else.
And that's true today.
Because of $5,000 in 1973.
Yeah.
Right,
exactly.
yeah. So we're having this conversation over $5,000.
I know.
I
Well,
offered to
19
give them their money back and they said no.
You, you would still, the town would still own that land, though.
Yes,
And it would
yes.
still be available to everyone in the town, as opposed to taking some use and giving it away and having it not be used, not be available, I should
Yeah.
say, to everyone in the town. That's
Sure.
the trade-off.
Right. So,
Yeah.
just to play devil's advocate to
Yeah.
that, let's say
Right.
Miller School has another 40 years of life, if we're
Yeah.
lucky. Okay, so now we take that ball field and maybe we want to put a school there,
Uh-huh.
and you can't do it because that property is tied up to those funds from 50 years ago.
Well, I mean, why would you do anything if you're gonna follow along that line? Why would you build a basketball court anyplace? Because in 50 years, you're gonna be tied up with that land.
Well, that's why that
There's
fund,
a
though, it
tension.
sounds great.
There's a tension there,
There-
definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely,
There's
a
no doubt about
long-term
it.
effect to it.
Yeah.
We're having that conversation over the 5,000 that seemed like a good deal in 1973 to
Well,
build
it
2
was,
tennis courts.
probably was a good deal then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, that was just the only thing I wanted to kind of enlighten, like,
Yeah.
and I don't say it has its drawbacks, I guess is what I was saying.
The- What was the
Your na-
drawbacks again, if I may ask?
Jeff, what? Jeff?
The drawback would be that in 50 years, say, that it still stays apart?
So basically,
Versus being whatever it is now, and then they can change whatever that is, and we have no idea what that is?
so let's, it's town property, right?
Sure, well, right now.
Right now, it's currently town property. If you earmark that for recreation by tagging it with this grant
Yeah.
at this point,
Absolutely.
in 50 years to 100 years,
Sure.
the needs for this town may be much different than needing a park at this location or a ball field at this location, and it would not have the ability to then put in some sort of public need.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, you look at Central Park in New York City, I mean, they definitely need more land there. They definitely need more building space, but you know what? It's still a park, and guess what? It's gonna be green space forever, and that's fantastic. Without that,
I was
that
thinking
city
the
would
same.
be screwed.
No, no,
Same
no,
example,
no.
really.
So that's just showing you on that other end of it, that's.
Yeah,
that's-
yeah, I mean, there's a reason that,
That's a tough point.
there's a reason what those expectations are in there, yes.
So if that's there forever, that's actually a good thing. Because you know what, as Ruben said, and other people said, I read on the internet one day when I was Zooming, I wasn't in town, said we don't need a park there. I'm sorry, I'm making a voice from what I was reading. We don't need a park there, there's plenty of land for another park to go someplace else. Well, that's the same theory as well, why don't we just give Volunteers of America another parcel of land, go for it. Do whatever you want, there you go, we have plenty of land from Ruben.
Can I jump in with something?
Yes, your name?
Jeanette Wheeler.
Jeanette Wheeler,
Yes.
thanks.
Leaving aside the park for children to play basketball or to go skating, an experience I had a couple of years ago, I'm the secretary of the Colony Club of Maine. there was no available space. We were wanting to have a World Collie Day, and as it turned out, the town owns a little space down on the river behind the VFW. And unbeknownst to me, several people own that property. And so we went down there to have a World Collie Day, which was absolutely wonderful. That was the only space available in Waldoboro. And we probably had 50 people there. We had probably 15, 16 collies. We had collie rescue there. We had collie demonstrations. We had an agility demonstration. It was wonderful, but that was the only place available, and we were on private property and didn't know it. Having a park like this would be wonderful for other events like World Collie Day. We had elderly people come, young children came, and it was beautiful to have these wonderful behaved collies and people coming out to learn about the breed. So I'm just pointing out there are many wonderful things you can do with this park other than having a basketball court and an ice skating rink.
Waldoboro Day, you could have
Yes, Waldoboro
concerts
Day.
when that happens again. You can have the sense of community is absolutely,
It's incredible.
it's absolutely gone. And by taking this away,
Dan,
putting something else, we need that.
Say who you are.
I'm still Jeff, sorry. Jeff Hurd. There's only 5 of us here. And so, I mean, the whole sense of community is absolutely taken out of the game just in the last bunch of years with these silly things here. And for people to go outside and actually have outdoor education, just learn, be outside is something that we desperately need.
Yeah.
And to say that there's other land to go do it, it's
There's
like,
really no
it's just
space
lazy.
available. No.
In town is a great spot for multiple people to walk, go get their mail, go take a walk, it's great.
Somebody have their hand up, Marcus?
Melvin.
Melvin does, yep.
Yeah, we didn't.
I'm Melvin Williams, and, you know, this land has belonged to the town for 11 years. When we moved out of that building as a school and went to the middle school out at Madonna, the town took possession of that property. Now, it seems that the Board of Selectmen, not this committee here, but we was recommended by the selectmen to come to this committee. They're in a pucker to get rid of it. They had this vote, you know, last November, it was non-binding, and we need, all we're really asking for is a recommendation, whether you think that is a feasible place for a park or a municipal sports venue or whatever, or you don't.
Yep.
And I hope you know, the people that are here are concerned. The people that are right here in this room tonight are very concerned that our town is being given away to people from away. And Troy, I've known you since the day you was born. You were born right here in Waldoboro.
Hey, let's not make that public record. Okay?
Let's not make
And I
this-
don't think you were.
No, so, again, we're trying to stay away from what the other uses of this property could be used. Again, it's not our debate, I understand it.
I could put it on you.
My question, I guess, to Saran would be, why, I'm trying to think of, why would you not locate, or could these two projects coexist?
No.
Like in the parcel that's in between the ball field and the 80 grade parcel. It just seems coincidental that the tennis courts are exactly where the building was or is.
Well,
Why couldn't it go behind it in the lot that's still the town's? Would be just my question.
that's not what I'm proposing, first of all,
Okay.
which is very important to know. I'm
Yeah.
not proposing that. And I think if you're suggesting that the tennis courts could be moved to where it says a multi-use sports lawn,
Or
And-
more so down to towards the road piece of it more, but But
Okay,
yes, yeah,
yep.
either way, that
Okay.
parcel.
And have Volunteers of America still come in? I know-
Or
don't
whatever,
want me-
whatever
Right,
was
You
going
don't want me to
there.
mention that name, okay, I won't
I-
mention
I'm
that
just
name.
saying,
I'll just
yes.
say- But those uses are inconsistent. They're inconsistent. You have 8 acres. You
Yep.
have 8 acres. It's not consistent to have elder housing in an area with basketball courts, tennis courts, baseball field. That's not consistent. It's more consistent to have walking trails, to have a place where there's a farmer's market or a community garden. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, no, it's fair, it's fair
No,
enough.
Yep.
And then I
So
guess.
it's more, let me just
Yep.
say, it's
Sorry.
more integrated. Some people would call it holistic, a holistic approach. I think that's really a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And along those lines, again, I started off this conversation by saying the charge of this committee was to look for a community center.
Right,
And let's say, if it wasn't the preceding project that you guys have been mentioning, and it was the recreation center
Yes.
in this location,
yes,
is that a different conversation? And again, we've also looked at other parcels that kind of connect to the ball fields that we have on the other side of town that's close to the current schools.
right.
So I'm
Right.
not saying this is a dead, but,
Yeah.
you know, obviously that used to be a community anchor
I
when it
know.
was a
And, you know,
school.
And I did have conversations with people about turning the current building into a community center. And I got negative response from the town, basically. For a number of reasons, you know, parking and location next to, but regardless, community center or not, we have 8 beautiful acres in our town. And you're not gonna have them if you let that property go. You're not gonna, and you're never gonna get it back, probably. I mean, not in my lifetime, certainly, you're not gonna get it back. So don't let this land go. Keep it, have it be a lovely in-town park that everybody in town can use, everyone. Not just 32 units, but everyone. We have over 5,000 people in our town. It doesn't have to be just for the people who live downtown. That's certainly one way that people look at this. But it's not. As Jeff was saying, this has been a wonderful place for Waldoboro Day. And it does, and as Jeanette said, it doesn't have to be for just Waldoboro Day. It could be used for other events. There's no reason that couldn't happen. But if you give it up, you will never get it back.
Volunteers of America, I think, said after 30 years, that was their time frame.
That they,
That was 90.
That would be the end.
Are they gonna pay to demolish the building then?
No, they were using the building.
No, but after that,
Oh, I don't know.
yeah.
How would we pay for demolishing the building to do this?
This is in my plan to pay for demolishing the building. That would be included, and that would be, Land and Water Conservation Funds would help to fund that cost.
and what is your plan for the match? I think you mentioned like donors or.
Donors.
How comfortable or how.
Donors.
How comfortable and what would the timeline on a project like that be?
Well,
I'm just-
I think,
And I'm not gonna hold you to it.
no, I know,
just
I'm
asking.
sitting here saying, I didn't bring that file with me, but I believe applications have to be in by, I think it's May 1st. I think it's May 1st.
But you do have,
I will get back to you on that.
but you'd need the matching funds first to be able to offer that, correct? Like, I don't know enough, I haven't got that far where we are, but.
In order to make the application, you've got to have a budget.
Yep,
And in order to do the budget, you have to decide what it is exactly you would do with this land, other than demolish the building and clean up the wetland.
yep.
So that, remember, you clean up the wetland, you get extra credits. You get extra credits for mitigation, not
I
just.
feel like I'm gonna get an A++ on a paper.
I know, exactly. So it really, you get extra credits, for mitigation, and you solve your problem of if you want to build a park and use this same kind of money someplace else in town, you won't get negative points for that.
I guess I'd open it up to the committee. Does committee have thoughts, questions? This is a time to ask these questions as far as anything that you have regarding the park, the development of the park, the funding of the park. The only thing we really haven't talked about is the maintenance of the park, which obviously is quite a bit down the road, but also an issue as well, or a concern.
I have a question for the
Yep,
maintenance of it. My
Yeah,
name
your
is
name?
Vicky Bell.
Vicky Bell.
So as far as maintenance goes, if you have these things like Waldeboro Day, Waldeboro's known for clamming, have a clam festival. If people setting up booths, they have to pay a fee for that. All that can be used for maintenance of the park. If you have, people who want to do yoga classes in the park, have them apply for a permit,
So-
a nominal fee, and all that can be added up through the year for helping maintain the park. The park can bring in business for the park.
So your event fees, permit fees,
Yeah, like if
Any
you're
type-
having a clam day, yearly on the same day, people who are setting up booths for food and stuff, they're gonna have to pay a fee. All that can be used to pay for the maintenance of the park. Concerts, festivals, any of it.
But
Yeah,
the
art
main
in the
point is,
park, the farmer's market, all of it.
the main point is it brings people in,
Yeah.
and that's what we need in this town.
So Jeff's point for those listening on Zoom was, the main point would be, it would, any type of event would bring people into the community, whether it's community people and/or outside people, which is fine.
It could even be a spot for wedding pictures or a wedding event, outdoor wedding or something like that.
So romantic.
Anything.
You're already married.
I mean, I'm just looking at it from the recreation standpoint, and again, I was starting to say earlier, and it wasn't cut off, I just kind of lost thought, but, it's important for the townspeople to know, and again, maybe not every committee is that way, or every everybody has their different thoughts on it. Obviously, when we made this committee, there was a period of time where there wasn't a recreation committee before Marcus. Marcus come on, and, I kind of approached it as well, like, hey, it's important to have citizens' input on projects like this, or programs to run, or anything that's an issue. Obviously, COVID's been a thing as well, so it's good to have the input. And here we are today. So it's important for people that are listening from home that if you have thoughts, needs, projects, or something like this before, and I give you credit for doing all this work, but some of it could have not been prevented, but if you had made it a partnership from the beginning with the Recreation Committee, and I'm not saying that has any different.
Existed, no offense.
How would anyone know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We don't get told much, so it's tough to.
yeah.
Again,
And I think COVID was probably part of that.
I don't know, our job isn't necessarily, obviously, we're a committee, however the town promotes the committee or makes sure those resources. I know the town's put a new website, they're trying to get that, and I know that was one of the pushes when I sat into the community meetings about all different issues. So my hope is that continues to improve, so more people do know. Looking at it, when I look at this from my background as a recreation professional for the last 15 years, the tennis courts, probably now, instead of tennis courts, it's probably pickleball.
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
different trend, it's the largest growing sport. There's probably different amenities that would make this more family friendly. There's no playground, there's nothing to draw any
Exactly.
family at all besides a sports related family.
Well, and the trails,
In the trails, yes. So,
which don't show up on here.
again, I'm not saying it's a negative.
Yeah. No,
But
I
if you
know.
were gonna make a master plan.
Yep,
If it fit into the Recreation Committee's priorities, which, again, funds are somewhat limited, and we're trying to, again, move forward with a recreation community center. If that's, that's our main goal, but this project's presenting itself. You know, so there's other amenities that could go in this parcel if it was gonna be deemed the best use as a park or the best use of any recreation funds. Because as well as your grants for this project could also go for a community center project in the lands around that as well. So does that make it tie fit better here? I don't know, but that's something we'll probably discuss in our next meeting to be able to make a recommendation what's best for this parcel or our thoughts on this parcel, if that makes any sense. Does anybody want to change that or add anything to
I
that?
don't think the,
Troy, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Yeah.
Charlie.
Can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. All right, now you can't see, you just be looking at the ceiling. No, sir, and thank you very much for the presentation. I hadn't really thought of that before. And just, I think it's worth us looking into more and talking about more. I think a lot of good points have been made. It's really hard to kind of weigh two different options, it seems like, that are out there, right, at least right now. And we don't necessarily have to do that, which is nice. From a recreation standpoint, though, I think Troy's mentioned it. You know, I think it really is worth us spending the time to look into how this might fit into our vision of recreation in Waldoboro in the future. You know, it's a little bit, you know, parks, I think, are a lot like waterfront property, in that, you know, global climate change aside, they're not making a whole lot more of that. And to get rid of something like that would have, you know, long-term implications. So without going any further, I just like to make sure we keep it on our agenda to discuss it further.
Any other committee members like to chime in, or anybody else on Zoom?
I have a comment.
Okay, sure. And you identify yourself, please?
Yes, Katie Winton-Batch.
Okay.
Just something that brings me back to way back when I was, when I was a little kid. We used to go to the back of the schools where they had tennis courts. And the way they built those tennis courts was with a berm, a 6-inch berm, going around the whole perimeter of that tennis court. And they would take out the poles and the netting that would support those the tennis court. And then the fire department would come down and they would flood those tennis courts with water in the wintertime to be used as skating rinks. Now, if it costs $2,000 for a liner, here you are, free of charge, a skating rink. So you could save that $2,000 for something else. That's all I had to say.
No, thank you. Thank you for that comment. Again, you won't find much argument from this committee as far as recreational uses for property or skating. I will share this just from my job in Brunswick. We have 3 ice rinks. They're all hear me out. They're very nice, but we have 0 of them operational right now because the weather does not permit.
Oh, right,
You know,
okay.
we haven't had any snow to bank them up. We haven't had consistent thaw, so
Let's keep that
it comes
green
up and
space.
down. So
Keep that green space, and maybe we can have some more nice.
right. So obviously building a rink on a solid surface is probably the easiest.
Uh-huh.
Again, would I love to say the town of Waldoboro is going to invest a lot more money into this department and have a true parks department. This is a recreation department. There really isn't a parks department.
Right.
Whereas where I work is a
Parks and Rec.
recreation and parks, and we're together, but there's a crew of 6 guys that maintains parks.
Yeah,
Here you have one recreation director that's
working half-time.
anywhere from half-time to full-time, depending on the year and stuff. And then you have Public Works. And for whatever your opinion of the Public Works is, they seem to have a pretty good task list. So it would be additional work to maintain. Obviously, my fear with anything is doing something halfway or not doing it so something is proud of.
Yeah.
I would hate to build a nice park, like, again, I don't say hate to build, but if we're to invest and build into a project or any type of thing, and then not properly maintain it, it would then become an eyesore.
I think that.
But that doesn't mean it's a reason not to do it.
No, and I think I've encountered that issue many times at the state level, and on a number of the Land for Maine's Future Fund projects, the state would basically ask for and receive from the funders money that was set aside specifically for stewardship. And those funds were not held by the state. They're held by the Maine Community Foundation or some other nonprofit, or they're held in trust, so that the funds are actually used for the maintenance of that particular project. Instead of saying, oh, well, we're gonna take $500 from here, $5,000 from here, and use it over here this year, and then you never see it again.
Yeah.
You know, that's what happens. It's just human nature. It's not, really a criticism of, that's just the way things work. So
Sure.
the way to manage that is to be sure you understand, be sure everybody understands what it costs to maintain this 8 acres,
Yep.
and figure that out and say how much money you need.
Okay. Maybe we can get that for next time.
And also,
Jeff, this is Jeff Hurd.
the botanical gardens in Booth Bay weren't built, so like in the winter time, so when they opened up, it was like, oh, look, they're finished 100%. Things take time to develop, of course, and that's one thing that's really awesome. To see something transform
That has,
and develop.
that's an amazing place, and especially,
And that draws in a lot of people.
how long did it take them to build that? Not, in my timeline, not very long, actually. I mean, I think we can probably all remember when it was not there. And yet, it is such a draw. I don't know that I would want it in our town, but anyway, it's, because it's too much, it's so.
Well, I don't think
so much.
I don't think what's on the table is a botanical gardens. We're looking at many acres of green space,
That's right.
a tennis court, and an ice rink, and hopefully other amenities if this was to go forward.
And
Picnic
the potential, like keeping it available, having potential is better than having no options. Having 0 options is exactly what it is, it's 0.
Yeah.
That's what's bad.
And once you give it up,
And with more population coming, and 30 years from now, 50 years from now, that's gonna be definitely wanted. If that's gone for something else, you're gonna be like, just like people say all the time, what's the problem? Why did they put that in? I don't know, but why are we even discussing about doing another one? It's like, this is something we'll never get rid of. So let's keep green space forever, that'd be unbelievable. Everybody can use it, the town can use it.
nice.
Otherwise, we throw it away. Doesn't make any sense.
So is there anybody, again, I feel like I'm dominating the conversation from
You are.
the committee's side, or everything's directed towards me, like I'm the final decision. And that's not going to be the case. How, and I guess, my question, I guess, knowing that there is the Volunteers of America project out there, the reason it couldn't coexist in that second parcel again is why? Not enough space? Is that the ultimate reason, or is that?
That's the ultimate.
That's the open.
That's the ultimate reason. 8 acres of land is not much land.
Until 32 extra people, plus their friends, plus whoever they have living there with
Well,
them.
32 extra people plus,
Friends,
right now,
kids.
2 parking spaces per unit, unless they get a variance. So let's just say it's 32 parking spaces. That's a lot of parking spaces, plus the building, plus they want to put an addition on the back of the building. But, and as I said, the use is not, it's not holistic, it's not consistent with the other uses around, on this land.
So again, I have
Let's donate.
not enough space.
We can donate.
Turn it over.
Doesn't fit the use or shared use.
No, it doesn't.
Holistic, I guess you said holistic.
I said
word.
holistic, it's not integrated.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question? Why can't we just give them 80 acres someplace else? Since we have so
Jeff
much
Hurd.
land, everyone always talks about how much land. Why does it have to be right there that they have to be?
That would be
I think
different.
I think you'd be directing that question to somebody else.
Right, that's a
Yeah,
different.
not
It's above my volunteer pay grade.
I'm just curious.
I think it's
No, I know.
all of us.
Why don't we just donate 8 acres?
I'm gonna donate my pay for this job, yeah. So, but no, that's fine.
Also, I think that Volunteers of America were going to have 3 employees. They couldn't guarantee that anybody would get first dibs on the housing there.
Yeah.
And this would be for everybody.
Yeah, so,
And this has nothing to do with the rec department. From what I understand, the rec department is, the recreation facility is someplace else with medical, not integrated with this. That's still a separate project.
possibly, yes, yeah.
is
I was
what
just,
Julie said.
I was just throwing out the,
Yeah, so,
if, you know, I mean, and Marcus can speak in a sec, if this project, like, obviously again, my goal when joining the rec committee was to try to get a community center. I've lived here my whole life, and that's what I've always wanted, and that's why I work in one now, probably. So, wish there was one here in town, and that's why I volunteered my time to do so. That being said, you know, one of the visions was at once the why I wanted to take over that building. That building is not set up properly for a recreation community center. If it was to be raised, then we have a different conversation about that parcel of, could you build a recreation center there? To renovate it, and some people, like Melvin said, people are tied to it with history and this and that, so be it, but it would not pose itself to be a recreation center as it is now. If it was raised, then there's a whole different conversation of, then you could build a parcel or build a project like we wanted. Obviously, there's benefits, maybe more so benefits at the other because it's closer to the school and closer to kids and such. So that doesn't outlie this. This one has sewer, this has electric, this has a road already built to it. You know, so there's different things that I see as a benefit.
As a benefit.
Doesn't mean that the selectman sees it as that, or the town, or.
Right.
But again, we haven't got to that point of, okay, we had the same binary question or non-binary question of the recreation. Again, it still will need to go to the voters and say, hey, do you really want to front this money? Do you really want to invest this? And then we could possibly either consider this or the other location,
or we could
or
ask-
where it fits in.
Or we could ask the first question, like, do you want the Volunteers of America to go in here or this?
Yeah.
Give them the same binary questions. Like, do you want something, keep it apart, or nothing? And see what the difference is
Yeah.
on the response.
Yeah, and again, Jeff, I understand your frustration, but some of those are mispointed. Like, we didn't come up with necessarily
Oh.
the if then, if that, you know. And who's to say, once you have, do you want a Volunteers of America or a park? And then another group comes in and says, hey, I want to throw my dollar in it and I want to develop it into 100,000 jobs, you know, some sort of business.
Whatever.
You know, and then, okay, now we're back at, well, you didn't have that as an option, so, I mean, it's sat there for 12 years, nothing's really come forward.
Yeah, what's
So-
another year? What's another year amount to?
Yeah,
Not getting
Yes.
back money either way.
somebody said, who on Zoom said something?
Yeah,
Trevor?
it's Trevor, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead,
Sorry,
Trevor.
don't mean to put this off the rails. We've talked about this before when we were talking about the recreation center. And my apologies for being ignorant about the VOA proposal. Does the VOA proposal include the ball field and, so, you know?
No.
No.
Just the parcel the building is on, not the middle field or the ball field.
right.
Uh,
So it's only parcel U4L63.
And they would not.
I don't think Volunteers is asking for the parcel on the other side that's connected to that, but I could be wrong.
I don't think they are either. But they're not proposing to take care of the tennis court problem.
Correct, that is under the town's care with the grant that's previously, but I have talked to Doug Beck
Okay.
previously.
Yeah,
And that asset possibly has lived its life as a tennis court for that many years.
right.
That it is eligible for reinstatement or reuse.
Right.
So you could reapply for that boundary or greater boundaries,
Right.
depending on the project. Marcus, I cut you off.
I feel like it's been said, and I feel like we're going around in circles, like, nobody on this committee is gonna disagree that a park in town is a great idea. But we were commissioned to come up with a community center idea, and I think some of the worry is if we spend this LWCF money on a park, is there gonna be anything left for a community center? You know, do we have to choose one over the other? You know, and then, you know, some people think Volunteers of America is a good idea, some people don't. That's not our decision. But that, you know, that's kind of where we're at with it.
And the other thing from maybe not the committees, but my personal, is because I was been involved when the other organization that starts with a Y and has an M and a C and an A in it, also stated that they could raise the funds to renovate the building, do all these different projects. And after, I think $200,000 of private money went into it, all I got was a roof now that we're talking about tearing up. So
We're not
the-
proposing anything like that, though, are we?
again, they were still looking to raise money and,
Yeah.
you know,
That was a little crookedness anyway, if I remember. So-
I won't personally comment on that, but I wasn't happy with the decision,
No.
nor the outcome. So.
Yeah.
I always thought that that building, again, for a whole different use, but if it was going to be recreationally used, if it's not a town park, and if you did renovate it, there's like office spaces upstairs that could, people that do yoga classes up there.
Yeah.
We could actually have a meeting that's more than 4 people allowed in a room. You know, you could have
Yeah.
like, instead of going to a school and using a gym for a town meeting, so you can actually get more people that would want to go out. Because when you come here and you see like 15 cars up, you're like, oh, the place is packed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't dug into it a lot, but we also know that we also, when we looked at it, we also know that there's a lot of handicap accessibility issues that building
And then
presents as well.
Then why are the Volunteers of America putting in the place there?
Well, you don't know. that-
Again, I don't know the scope. They could rip everything in the middle out. I have no idea. I have not looked at that project besides
And they could
knowing
back-
that it's a competing interest to this project.
Well,
That's about
at
it.
and for all you know, they could back out.
Just like they did with the body.
They could back out.
If they could, this becomes probably a very different conversation.
Yeah.
Where, you know,
In what way, Marcus?
just, you know, I think maybe if there were, you know, if they're not there, you know, then the town's looking for any way to get rid of it. At this point, they're looking for the best way, and they, you know, while I understand all your opinions, not everybody has that. So I think.
Who in this town would think that not giving any privilege or any, like if somebody wanted to stay there from this community, Jane Lindsay says this commonly said, this is something place for me. You're like, well, no, this is a place for them to dump their Wiscasset venue, their Belfast, their overflow to whatever. It's a business. It's what they do for a living. It's what their job is. They're not going to give us priority. My friend is on the planning board in Thomaston, and they have the same situation where there's a waiting line for their own community, but they'll never get in because it's being filtered in from other towns.
Yeah.
Same thing that's going to happen here.
Yeah, there was no guarantee.
Yeah.
Well,
Again, so
I don't think of it that way. I honestly, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I do understand what you're saying, but I think of this in terms of, you give up this land, you're never gonna get it back. The town is never gonna get this back.
gentleman in front.
My name is Daniel Martone. I live across the street.
Daniel Martone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I live across the street from 80 Gray with my wife, and I guess my question is for you, Saran, and for you, sir. Could you guys see a possibility where you'd be willing to work with the town, raise 80 Gray, and have that rec center built there?
I don't have a problem with that, but I think the town does. And am I correct?
Again, like, I would just say that with this, we wanted to come in, answer any questions, have
Yeah.
a chance for the rec committee to ask any questions to Susan, or get citizens' input. Again, the selectmen may have a different vision, and we've had different discussions as a committee. Again, we haven't met for about a year.
Right.
You know,
Right.
or 10 months. So the last we knew that the project went to, you know, how much would you be willing to spend for a recreation community center?
Yeah.
And it came back, I think, at $2 million that they were comfortable bonding. Could that number change? Could that not be approved? I have no idea. That's not really the discussion right now. And the location, obviously, if you said we're gonna build it over to the other location, and it's gonna cost us $600,000 to develop the property before we build upward, then maybe this location could possibly make more sense. But if it's gonna cost us $330,000 to whatever, to tear down the building and remove it, and then build another building, maybe that doesn't make sense. And again, I'm just kind of talking it out loud, but
Say on that form there, you say 2 million was the one that they voted on, sure. But if you put 5 million as the first one, 10 million and 15, they would have said 5 million.
right.
My point is, whatever you put on there was not, it was a tough, it's like choose the less, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I
Again,
understand that, and then, with the 2 million, maybe there's opportunities for these grants to make it more, so we can make it more usable for
I don't know, I'm with you,
people.
but I'm saying if you
Yeah.
just put an imaginary, just put 10, 15, and 500 million.
Again,
they would've chucked-
again, you're looking at the tool itself compared to the actual questions.
No, for
Or
sure.
sincerity, yes.
So, understand. When we were commissioned to look at a community center, 80 Gray, as it sits now, was still there, and it wasn't charged to us to renovate a building, it was charged to build a new one. And we had no indication that the town was willing to tear it down at that point, they were still looking to sell it. So since we've started, we've been looking at building them over at the ball fields, there's more land over there. Like Troy said, it is closer to the school, and we have been in talks about getting water and sewer and all that up there, which would also be good for the town, but at the same time, if the building was gone at 80 Gray, like Troy said, it becomes a very viable option as well. It's just nothing we've looked at so far because the building's there.
But you do know that the Land and Water Conservation Fund's application could include, my proposal is tearing the building down,
Right.
right?
And they have, that's an allowable expense?
For sure.
Oh, that's good, that's education for me. Nice.
You know, the rec department that we talked about on our committee is mostly indoor all things. This is outdoor. So it's two different, an apple and an orange, two different uses for people in the town.
You can't go to the community center like if it closes at 5, say, and it's summertime, you wanna go for a walk. Or say you want to go to the community center, you can't go because the doors are locked, well, you can go to the town park if you wanted to go for a walk.
Sure. So with that, I'd like to kind of maybe move on to the next, unless somebody has something they'd like to say beforehand, or Saran, if you want to conclude anything, but my take is that we will meet next month.
Right.
And we will discuss it, and then hopefully we can come up with some formulation or some recommendation to the selectmen. If we find out it's differently, maybe we have to move the meeting up, and we'll make sure that gets informed some way, but I don't envision that.
Okay, thank
This
you.
is just a proposal of what you envisioned,
That's right. That's
just
all
very lightly,
to
and
help
that,
you, yes.
yeah, and for playground and basketball and all of that other things, or the ice rink can be moved and,
Right.
yeah, okay.
And again, for anybody watching this and would like to volunteer or get involved in fundraising for a project similar to this, or a project like this, or a community center, those are gonna be things that are always needed. Community centers made by community members, community involvement, and input. Like I said, one of the goals for the town is to help with the communication of what's going on, and you can obviously reach Marcus. His email's on the website, I believe, correct? You can find me if you have questions indirectly or comments or thoughts, then you feel free to contact me as well, and Marcus can supply you with that.
Troy, this is Kelly. I wanted just to clarify something with Saran. Saran, what you're asking of the Recreation Committee is that we make a recommendation to the Select Board that they hit the pause button on the Volunteers of America project to allow for further time to examine the possibility of a green space instead. Is that correct? That's what you're asking of us?
That's correct. That's what
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
asking.
Thanks.
Kelly, you got that down?
Yeah.
I did, yes.
All right, great. That will give a good starting spot.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you guys are more than welcome to stay if you'd like. If you'd like to leave, that's fine as well. And
What's the next on the agenda here?
the next is a Recreation Director's report. Please note that obviously with COVID-19, that report may be a little bit skewed, yes.
Skimpy.
It's not been a typical year.
It's a whole year review.
Kelly, I'm going off. This is Katie.
Bye, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Have a good night.
You too.
I'll just get away from
I'm just
you.
like, as a business owner, I would just love to have green space so we can actually have more people come to town. That's, the other thing's not gonna help business at all. It's gonna drive more people out.
Do you want to
Same
ride
here.
It's
home?
bad.
Yes, I do.
Nobody wants to come here to schools or.
Are you gonna stay, or do you?
I better get home.
Yeah.
All right, we're just gonna take a pause here. Those that want to leave, thank you for coming in.
Very much.
Can leave.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we stick around?
Yeah, you're more than welcome, yeah. This is a public meeting. We just typically don't have an audience. We're glad to have you.
Thought I was stronger than I am. Evidently I'm not.
All right,
Thank you for having us.
thank you. All right.
Marcus, when you give your report, could you speak a little bit closer to the speaker so I can hear you more clearly?
Do you want this for you?
There you go,
How's
that's it,
that?
thanks.
Is that better?
That's perfect, thank
There we
you.
go. Okay. So when I wrote my report, I kind of went back to when we stopped a meeting. I believe the last meeting we had was either January or February, and then COVID hit, and we pretty much stopped. Between the time we had our last meeting and the time that COVID hit, we did end up getting in both basketball tournaments we ran last spring, which was good because most towns had to cancel one or both of theirs when COVID hit. It was like the next weekend, all the tournaments shut down. So that was a good little fundraiser for Madomic Youth Basketball as well as Waldoboro Rec. During the summer, I was transitioned to the Public Works Department because no recreation was going on. I worked there until September 1st. At that point, I came back to the office, and since then I've been town clerk / part-time recreation director. All of the office staff was cut back to 32 hours a week, and recreation was cut back to 16 hours a week. For the upcoming budget, we're just putting budgets together now. They've had me put together a full-time budget as well as a 16-hour-a-week budget. And I think pretty much the deciding factor on whether or not I go back to full-time or not is the revenue sharing that we get from the state, as well as, does the world start to open back up where I can get some recreation done. I was able to do some stuff through the fall. I ran a full co-ed softball season with 13 teams, the same as we had in 2019. The school wouldn't let us use their fields. They've been locked down since COVID hit. They're doing school stuff, but no outside programs have been allowed to use school property. So I used the town and Little League fields here in town, and it ran pretty well. And then we also got in shortened and different soccer season, but we did get the kids out and kicking some soccer balls around. It ran about 4 weeks. We had one rain out week, and then we were going to extend to get a 5th week. But a related COVID case, we shut down kind of in an abundance of caution. There was I don't think they ever got it, but it was some kids that were, in the same classroom as another kid that wasn't on a team, so we shut it down. Once I got back to the office, talks kind of began again about the community center. Talking with the town manager, I kind of gave her the sizing dimensions we came up with last spring. If I remember right, it was right around 22 to 24,000 square feet was kind of what we were looking at with all the amenities that we thought we might want. And so we put it on the non-binding ballot, like we talked about earlier, with the $2, $4, and $6 million options. The $2 million option passed with the most, and then the 4 and the 6 came in about even. And then also on the non-binding ballot was a rough estimate of yearly cost to run the department if we got a community center. And that article passed, but it was actually a lot closer than the building itself. I don't know if people were confused by that question or not. It was a lot less money, but
it is what it is. All we can do is go from there. A few weeks ago, we started up our ski club again, going every Friday to the Snow Bowl. We've had 5 the first 2 weeks. I think we got 4 going this week. I'm hoping that will grow back. Last year we were 10 to 12. Hoping to grow, but I know this weekend is supposed to be cold. And then with the school not allowing us to use any facilities still, K2 basketball will not be happening. That usually starts this weekend. And then our 5th, 6th tournaments for this year will be canceled, not being able to get into the schools to use the gyms. So that's kind of my year in review, what I've been able to get done and what I've been doing in the meantime. If you guys have any questions, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Seems like a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
So I'd just add to that, obviously, being immersed in the recreation field, it's been a very challenge, just like any business owner or anybody else. It's a lot of work doing half as much as you normally would do to try to get there, or be set back when you try to do a program and you get delayed because of a variety of COVID reasons. So
Right. I'm at the point where I need to start planning for a summer rec program, and if the school doesn't let me back in, I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's still going to take me 2 or 3 months to plan it.
So
to maybe all for nothing, but we'll
You use Miller, right?
for the summer rec
Yeah.
program, yeah. But if I have backup plans, but it wouldn't be a traditional.
Do you have any lead on some of your teachers that you used for that? Are some of those?
I haven't contacted my staff, but I'm hopeful. I know some of them have probably moved on to college and whatnot, but
Yeah.
2 years ago we had a really good staff, and then last year they were all up. The whole staff was coming back, which was the first time that had happened since I've been hired. But but then we had to get shut down. So I'm hopeful come this summer. I'm hoping to get some of that staff back. My plan last summer was to go from our part-time summer rec camp to a full-time. So my staff was going to go from 4 employees to about 10, but then it didn't happen. So having those 4 back would have been a good core to get started with, but hopefully I can get some of those
And
back.
you were extending the hours, I think, too, weren't you?
Yeah, full-time. So it was going from 9 to 1 to 7:30 to 4 or 8:30 to 4:30 with before and after care, so that parents with full-time jobs could get their kids there. Can you guys hear, or is that humming real loud on Zoom?
Yeah, I can hear.
You can hear? It's humming up here. I didn't know.
Sort of, but what I can't hear, you can fill in my notes.
All right.
Okay. So anybody else on Zoom that have any questions for Marcus regarding his report? All right.
I just want to compliment him on being so flexible with all the different jobs.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do think that's noteworthy of the pandemic has made people do different things, and that's typically not in their job description or doing a whole different job altogether. And my hope, obviously, we'll talk a little bit later about budget, is that we can get you back to being a full-time recreation or as close to it as possible, but we'll discuss that later on in the meeting.
Sounds good.
Number 5, old business, select board charge moving forward. Marcus, I'll kind of turn that over to you.
Yeah, so I just threw this in. This is what we've been talking about since we started our rec committee meetings. Our charge is still to, come up with a plan for a community center for Waldoboro. Obviously with what transcribed earlier in the meeting, maybe there's some new plans for that. But I just wanted to, we haven't met, when we last met, we were coming up with sizes and amenities. And now since then, we thought it was pretty much non-existent for 6 months, and then we threw it on the non-binding ballot and it passed pretty well. So maybe we're thinking about it again. Where do we go from here? I think our charge at this point, after talking with the town manager, is to, with the 2 million passing, start figuring out what amenities we can offer in that price range. Obviously that's going to differ amongst locations, so that's going to be something we'll have to figure out a little bit as we go, but that's kind of our charge moving forward, is to start, we came up with a wish list before, now we've been kind of given a price tag, what fits. I guess that's where we go from here.
Moving on to number 6, again, you'll see this meeting's pretty.
I'm sorry, let me ask a quick question,
Sure.
Marcus.
Sure.
The $2 million that passed, that got the most votes in the non-binding resolution.
Yeah.
Is that $2 million of money that I
That's-
can't recall how that wording
I
was.
believe that the wording was bonded, so that's,
Bonded, okay.
yeah, so that's, money that,
So when you talk about us needing to come up with a plan for a community center that would be within that $2 million, we're only talking about the bond of $2 million. There was also the possibility of partnerships with Maine Health. There were grant possibilities that Julie was looking into. So there may be more than $2 million available, but the only thing we could draw on is that bond for $2 million. Is that right?
yeah, that's kind of where we're at. In talks with Julie, we're not really sure where the talks with Lincoln Health are gonna be. But the grants are still definitely a possibility. And maybe Lincoln Health is as well, but it hasn't been brought up as much as it was pre-COVID. So I think it would be smart of us to work off the 2 million plus whatever maybe we think we could get in grants, but
Right.
The
2 million would give us a starting point, what we could build without any other matching funds, any other grants, or any other partnerships. And from there would be trying to look and identify where that $2 million could be used to maximize and be a matching grant, and try to get that number up to a more appeasing number to build a facility with some of the amenities that our earlier survey showed that the community was looking for.
Of course,
Thank you.
now we have added costs and everything has gone up since
yeah,
we did those things
It's true.
tremendously.
so.
Anybody else, as far as on item 5.1, the select board charge? If not, we'll move to new business. And again, I'll turn it over to Marcus, who might have touched on some of these things as well, but his forecast or outlook on spring preview and what factors may go into that maybe.
Yeah, so for the spring, I've already signed up for our annual pitch hit and run. I got an email today, they're sending out the supplies, so I'm hoping, we didn't run it last year because that baseball was shut down across the country, so hoping to do that again. That's a free program we run for kids. They don't just have to be from Waldoboro, they can just be from the area, but it's a really cool experience where they compete in the local competition. If they win that, they move on to the state competition, and the next level after that is the regional, which is at Fenway Park. And we actually had a young girl 2 years ago go all the way to Fenway Park, and I think she finished second there, which is pretty cool to have a little 10-year-old girl from this area get to go out and compete at Fenway.
Yeah.
It's a cool story. Other than that, in talks with Little League, they're waiting to hear from Little League International, but preparing for a full season. Last year, Little League was canceled in the spring, but they ran, not under the Little League banner, but kind of a few private citizens put together basically a summer league, and they played all summer without any issues. So they feel pretty confident that even if Little League says no, they have the groundwork to run another successful season this spring. So at that point, I would do whatever I could to help them with my current hours and keep the fields maintained and playable for them. And that's kind of my, outside of planning for the summer, that's kind of the two things I have on my agenda for the spring.
And then 6.2, which I'll be of interest to, is the rec budget for 2022. I know you touched earlier about being charged to develop 2 budgets with different hours and such. So maybe you could take some time to explain at least the idea of it.
Yep, so the full-time budget, they're not sure what they're gonna do with the office hours yet, but I'm thinking it's gonna be somewhere between 32 and 40 hours a week. That I've heard the number 36 a couple times, not quite sure what they're doing. But if the revenue sharing comes back in from the state and we can fund a full rec department, and I have something to do, if it's open enough where I can run recreation programs, then I'll be back to my full-time budget that I had prepared, or I had 2 years ago, with basically restoring the budget I had. I also prepared another 16-hour-a-week budget, which leaves me enough time. I'm not working 16 hours a week of rec, but I'm doing chunks of it here and there to run my bigger programs that reach the most people, like co-ed softball, youth soccer, helping with Little League. Those are the program. Summer rec if I can. Probably not at part-time, but being part-time this year, I've tried to do as many of the bigger programs as I can. The pickup basketball nights where 10 people show up have kind of gone out of the window, but I can still get some stuff, with, my programs that they're spread out, but they have more people. That's kind of been my goal, is to reach as many people as I could with the hours I have.
And I also think it's fair for your argument is also we're looking at larger scale projects that need to possibly be compared, or even if it was just one project, how to get to that. Obviously we're all here volunteers, and there's definitely some details and numbers and how we could possibly get more citizen input as well, and those type of tasks. But I think that's another argument for full-time or close to that as well. Even if the current conditions, June 1 or July 1, whenever budget starts, aren't 100% COVID, they should be fairly close. At least I know a lot of others are hoping that, we all are. Obviously outdoor activity lends for more. And then just the overall, people are more adjusted to the climate of mask cleaning, all that different stuff.
There's kind of been a groundwork laid, and there's some guidelines on what to follow now. So if I can't get back in the school and I can't run, if I get put back to full time, but I can't be in the school and run my normal summer rec program, my plan is just to run 1 week camps on our rec fields every week that I
haven't
can.
thought about that. I think the Waldorf Theater has a lot of their seats out of the building being reupholstered. You may approach them to maybe use that space in there. And they have that big parking lot in the back.
We talked about it a little bit today, for, not so much for a full summer rec camp, but for, if I can't use the school and I have to do 1 week camps, I'm thinking, whatever I can do, like a soccer camp, a 1 week soccer camp, a 1 week baseball camp, and it got brought, what about a 1 week drama camp? Obviously, I'd have to find somebody to run that, because I don't know anything about drama.
But I was just thinking.
The Waldorf Theater was brought up when we talked about that. The building.
If their chairs are out for, the seats are out being,
There may be an option for alternate locations, whether something like we propose or the church, or
that's what we thought of. It depends.
What's happening with the church?
I'm not sure. I haven't talked to them in quite a while, but they were letting us run pickleball. Kind of waiting to get back on that. I'd like to get that back up and running at some point.
Would Friendship School let you use Friendship School?
No. This district wide. They've shut everything down, and they've gone at least for basketball, they have their own, like the high school teams are using their facilities, but their Pee Wee program, they wouldn't let them use it either. So it's not just me.
When you're saying Friendship or Friendship Street School?
Friendship
Village.
The town of Friendship School.
Or
the Han Center?
The Han Center maybe, but then
we're
we're reaching out of our town.
They probably wouldn't want to tie up another community in their facility, but anybody have any questions for Marcus regarding the budget process or budget itself, or anything that you'd like to see him discuss or answer? Seeing none, I'll move to which looks like our last item, 6.3, items for upcoming agenda. I think earlier's discussion moves one item into that agenda, which would be the further discussion of the 80 Gray Park project, with hopefully a recommendation or recommendations for that site to be considered by the select board. And then,
I
yep.
I would suggest that we make that the entire agenda for the next meeting. I know that we do want to begin looking at what we may or may not be able to do within a $2 million bond, but it seems like this one's a little more time sensitive. Is that fair to say?
I would say that's probably fair. I guess it may be wise to have either through email or some sort of correspondence if the people had questions either from internally or the community, that we could try to discuss, you know, the merits of that project and how,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely.
I don't know what we'd get for results. I'd be hesitant to just put it on Facebook where anybody could, you know. I do like the commitment of a natural, like, I actually have to open up a browser and get to my email and send an email, besides my quick thought on Facebook, and, you know, and then it gets dissected, and then after that people aren't comfortable necessarily leaving a message, or it turns the wrong way, so.
Yeah.
But I think it might be something that we could discuss of an open forum as far as questions coming in that we could discuss during this next meeting.
Yep.
And then hopefully at the end of that meeting, be able to come up with some sort of recommendation or recommendations for them to consider.
Right.
When is the select board meet again?
They met yesterday, right? So,
Right.
in 2 weeks.
So they meet on the 2nd?
Do we want to try to meet together, our committee, do we want to try to meet again before the next select board meeting so that we can make our recommendation at that meeting?
What I would say is, my recommendation would be to set it for next month as it is, and charge Marcus to communicate with the town manager or the chair of the select committee to see where the timeline is, if we need to move up to meet a certain timeline or decision threshold, or if that can be delayed and wait till we have another meeting.
Yeah.
So we'd be looking at the 24th of February?
Correct.
That's there is no 4th Wednesday in February, so that would be the 24th. Is that
That is the
work for
4th, right?
everybody?
Yeah, that's.
So you're saying that's the third Wednesday or the fourth Wednesday?
It's the 4th
It's the 4th.
Wednesday.
There is no 4th Wednesday. Well,
Yeah.
I take that back. There is, I'm sorry.
It is the 4th.
There
I think
is-
there's always 4 Wednesdays,
Yes, the 24th.
sometimes 5, but
Yeah.
good, because I have a meeting with my commission the Wednesday prior, but if Marcus finds out we need to meet sooner than that, then we can try to
I can.
figure that out and then communicate that with the
I will
community.
reach back out to Sue Rand and see what her timetable is for
She thought it was May
May.
1st.
I know in talks with some town people that we're not in any rush for VOA. There's time there. If Suran needs to get stuff in, then maybe that changes things. But I was told not to rush our meeting because of VOA. So yes, Jim.
What's the latest on VOA? Are they really gung ho or?
They're in negotiations. I'm not. All I know is what I hear and what I'm privy to. I'm not in any of those meetings. They're in talks with them. They're negotiating stuff, but it's nothing that's going to be resolved within the next month or two. So they're
Right, okay.
So us moving a meeting up 2 weeks for that isn't necessary, but if it is to get the park done,
Then we will do so.
then maybe.
Anybody have anything else? Any other new items? Any other? Again, I agree with you, Kelly, that that's probably the best agenda item. And then if something comes forward, we'll just add it or give Marcus the ability to add it if needed.
Yep.
And other than that, I would take a motion to
I think maybe we should review the rec department, what we had said, and maybe we need to look at that a little bit.
Could you clarify that a little bit? I'm sorry.
Well, all the things that we had thought we should have in the rec department.
In the community center?
In the community center?
Community
like
community
what
center.
assets in that building,
Yeah,
and then see how that possibly ties into this project?
maybe, I
Or not?
don't know, or
Okay.
not. Mhm. Well, I think we need to find out from the select board if, I thought I had heard that the medical portion was still on board. They still wanted it.
Yeah.
We had gotten the driveway okay, there were, main
Yeah.
modular was to go in, so I thought it was still on board.
I mean, I
might
believe
be.
that was currently the preferred path, but
Yeah.
with this information or this discussion,
Yeah.
maybe that changes, maybe it doesn't, but. Anything else?
What's that?
Would
Just want
any-
to wish everybody safe health too. I mean, it's, as you guys all know, Maine is like the rest of the country, not looking very good right now. And I'm sitting here looking at 5 people who've been in the room together for nearly 2 hours. You're all masked, which is great. Thank you very much. But that's the kind of thing that would make Dr. Shaw cringe. So we might want to consider having these meetings on Zoom just to reduce risk, to look out for our communities. That's a suggestion I would like to make for the next meeting, until we get this under control, until we get more vaccination. That might be something we might want to consider.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, we could discuss it. I don't know. Usually that would come from the town manager or the town's policy on meetings. Right now, I think the town's policy on meetings is allowing,
Oh, I understand that everything that happened tonight was absolutely within the policy. I'm suggesting that maybe we go a little bit beyond that, when we can, to keep everybody safe. We're never going to get through this until we get these numbers down. So that's all I'm suggesting.
I'm fine coming in to a meeting.
I'm fine coming in. By that time, I'll have my second shot, so I'll feel very fine.
Yeah.
Well, we can discuss it over email.
Yeah, we'll discuss it by email, and again, we'll communicate it with the public. And
So-
we thank you guys for coming and staying.
Yeah.
Hopefully we didn't bore you.
No.
All right.
Yeah, it was
Thank
good.
you.
In fact.
All right, with that, I'll take I don't think I got a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
I'll make it. I gotcha.
Trevor?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll
Second? All in favor?
I'll second it.
Bye. It's
Great.
good to see everybody.
Thanks.
All right.
You wanna
Here, everybody. Hey, Renee, good to see you here.
Can any of them just have one moment and you let me show?
Yeah, let's get everybody up here.
Hey, thanks, Marcus.
Sure.
Thanks, Trevor, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, look,
You guys.
talk to you.
See ya.
So sir, which house do you live in?
I live on 71 School Street, so
Stop this.
my house
Can you shut this? Oh, yeah.
is here. My house would be right here.
Okay.
So that's our
Sure,
neighbor, the
sure.
Coates.
My grandparents' house was here.
No kidding, we know the guy. He has dogs now.
Does he?
He's
Yeah.
got, yeah, he's got a.
Yeah, so
So-
my grandfather used to be the